Hi friends, I'm Prairie Vintage Jewelry. My name is Linda. I'm an energy intuitive reader here on YouTube, and I generally use the tarot and the oracle cards in order to communicate energies going on from spirit to you, transmitting whatever information, frequency that I'm tapped into with spirit in order to help the collective heal, and to whichever vibration I'm tapping into, drawing in the same types of people who are vibrating at the same dimensional level of vibration as I am. So been interesting for sure. This is not a tarot reading video, okay? I may do one a little later today depending on how long this video goes, but I might lose some of you guys at this point, and that I'm okay with it. I'm blessed to have walked in your journey for as long as I have, and I hope not to lose you guys here. But yeah, I wanted to really do a video about my spiritual awakening. Then I thought, well, I can't really do a video, and I go off on tangents a lot, so I was like, this is going to go on for a bit. So I'm going to take off little bits, chew off little bits in this journey, but I do feel like this information might help, again, one person, two people, that's fine. Just sharing my own spiritual awakening, if I can even pinpoint some of these experiences that might help you depending on where you're at. Now, I do feel as though the collective I'm tapped into may be, again, vibrating on the same frequency, otherwise I wouldn't have brought you into my existence. So if you're here, you're vibrating at the same level, and maybe what I'm saying here may not 100% make sense to the mind, but there is a knowing here and a vibration, an energy vibration that you are vibrating at that certainly is bringing you into this energetic field that I'm feeling, okay? So I was like, yeah, I should write down these points and stay very pointed, but if I do that, and trust me, I'm very Virgo, very structured, that would make sense, but I was like, it might not have the same punch as if I was just to kind of freestyle, limitless energy as I'm feeling it. So what I wanted to start off with maybe was just the overall structure of the spiritual awakening, and then separate videos I can go into certain parts. But I think there's part of me that is, well, definitely there's part of me still going through certain challenges, I guess, or experiences within the spiritual awakening that still don't make full sense to me. And it may be helpful to get it out without understanding it for other people too. But I don't know. I'm still kind of uncovering what that looks like. But for me, I guess it was a mixture of things in my life that kind of resulted in me getting to where I am right now in my life. Obviously, everyone can say that, right? A mixture of your past and your actions and your thoughts have created your reality. So I am blessed to be here, though I do feel as though I am shifting my consciousness to a reality that is more suited to my authentic self, okay? And I don't know that my external environment is fully reflecting my true authentic self at this time, but I do feel a shift. So collectively, maybe you guys are kind of at that same point where you're feeling the shift inside and you're aligning yourself to your authentic being. You're becoming conscious of certain things within yourself, and maybe your environment isn't necessarily reflecting that. So there seems to be like a disconnect, or at least this is what I'm feeling. So, but I do think that a lot of you guys might be experiencing the same thing. So throughout these videos, I may be just making an assumption you're kind of in the same wavelength. And if you're not, maybe at some point you may experience this and then be like, yeah, okay, this sounds like something familiar. So you're kind of more prepared to deal with this. But let me begin. I guess, I am a spiritual being. I mean, we're all spiritual beings, but sometimes we may forget the trueness of where we came from and who we are, especially nowadays with, technology at its rapid pace. And like back in the day when you're like a caveman and things are a little more simplistic, I guess it's a little easier for you to get in tune with your natural self. So I think that, spiritual awakening has been a huge topic in the last I'd say even 3 years, more than it has been in the past. And it's my belief that it has a lot to do with the rapid transforming technology that's going on around us. Everything's getting faster, quicker. And what's the opposite of spirituality and a knowing and a feeling? It is something like technology that is more dealing with numbers and technology is on the polar spectrum, right? So this is why I feel like a lot of people are feeling it more intensely, because especially, I think people from my generation or onward, are definitely experiencing a shift more intense than maybe our forefathers or other people in the past who have experienced spiritual awakenings, because they might have been a little closer to their authentic self and needed to calibrate or realign. Whereas, if you're living in a world of technology or in a world that around you is completely disconnected from that trueness of knowing, spirit, authenticity, then there is a higher degree of calibration, which might be why we're feeling it so much more intently. Okay, so I don't know how many of you guys have heard of a kundalini awakening, but I don't know for 100% certain that I experienced a kundalini awakening. All I know is I experienced an awakening, and it's an undeniable knowing that you're experiencing something that is, well, you think it's not natural or normal, because you can go in my case, 43 years experiencing a consistency of what you know yourself to be true and how you know yourself to be. And then all of a sudden you're experiencing all these things happening and you're like, am I going crazy? Am I bipolar? And we'll get into all the signs and things. And, so then, something seems off. But I think what that's all about is that you're actually getting in tune with your authentic self, and all of that is your body and your physical reality and your environment just calibrating to get closer to your ascension, closer to your authenticity, closer to who you are. So you might not know or have even planned, some people might want to get closer to their spirituality, so they could be practicing meditations and all these things with crystals and herbs and natural ways of being, and might never experience such a thing, right? And be like, yeah, I want to get closer to that, and they may find a sense of calm, they may find a sense of authenticity. But I think that people who have actually experienced a true awakening, you couldn't write it, you couldn't control it to happen at a certain point in your life. It just happens. And for some people, I'd say most people, are probably not even prepared to or understand what it is. So for me, I was in the latter half of experiencing an awakening that I wasn't prepared for nor wanted. Okay. Now I have always been spiritual, so it's not like, oh, I don't want to be authentic, because one part of me has always been true to myself. I've always spoke my mind. I've never deviated, or I shouldn't say never, rarely ever deviated from my moral compass of what I felt to be true. Okay. Maybe sometimes you take a detour, right? But for the most part, I always lived aligned with what I truly felt to be true. Now, the key is, what you truly feel to be true could be based on conditioning and your mindset and things that are fed to you from experiences, other people, or just your perception of what's going on around you. Okay, so although I was living in authenticity, I was living in an authenticity within my ego, within my mind, within what it was that felt true to me. Okay, so this is how I was able to move through that, because I was always one that believed in, ethics and being moral, and not living in a cognitive dissonance or being disconnected from reality. I wanted to be true to myself and be authentic. So of course it was important to me to align my life with that of which I felt was true. But until I experienced a knowing that what I was actually doing was all ego driven and ego-based, or at least it was an action based on my perception of my mind of what it is that I was conditioned to believe, then things became apparently clear, that things just weren't as they appeared, and shit hit the fan, so to speak, and then my whole life flipped upside down. Okay, or at least this is how it feels. So yeah, let's go back to my first real spiritual thing that happened that was kind of just really interesting. Was when I was 16. I recall, having an experience where I was laying down and I was about to wake up. So I was aware that, the sun was coming up, I'm waking up, I'm just laying down, I'm about to open my eyes. Wasn't in a state of sleep. In fact, I had conscious thoughts about, my day or whatever, when you're just lying down and your eyes are closed, but you're kind of awake. So all of a sudden, I feel my body, and my body is kind of raising, and I could feel it raising off my mattress, and I hear this like loud beeping noise, okay, like a really high intense, almost like tinnitus when your ears beep. Anyway, this beeping, and it was like very high pitched, very intense, came with this intense flood, and as I feel my body and I can't open my eyes, and I'm like, what is this? I'm seeing this white, bright light, okay? And out of this white, bright light, I see almost like, it looked like a cloud, an angel wing, I don't know, something that was white and kind of fluffy, feathery. Hard to explain, but, I see this, and I'm seeing this like white light, and I can't move, and my body, and by this point, like, no drugs, right? No, like, very straight edge. So I wasn't under the influence of anything at all. I wasn't under a whole bunch of traumatic stuff going on. I mean, we can get into my upbringing in some other video, but for the most part, I was not experiencing a challenge, and was not expecting to have such an experience. So as I'm hearing this high intense beeping, as I see this bright white light and this flooding feeling of just like, almost like I'm passing over to another dimension, all of a sudden, fear kicks in, and as the intensity got to a point where I felt like I couldn't take anymore, it completely stopped, and everything went dark, or at least neutral, I guess. No more light, no more beeping, no more intensity, and I felt my body slowly coming down, okay? And the minute I felt underneath me, my mattress, my eyes open, and I was like, that was very weird. But at 16, you don't have so much life experience, so you just kind of chalk it up to, that was weird, maybe I was dreaming. A very spiritual experience that I hung on to for many years and explaining to people, but unless you go through it, people think, okay, you were probably, still sleeping or on drugs or whatever. It was real to me, what I experienced there. But I would say, from that point, things became just much more, I just became much more aware of things that were visible here in this 3D plane, and that are going on in other dimensions, or unspoken things are going on. I didn't know if it was dimensions or what it was. I just knew that there was more to me than what I was living in that moment. And dreams as well became, astral projections, where I would wake up and I would remember being a free spirit floating or flying over the ocean, or flying. It was always like above the sceneries, and I felt a sense of liberation. I haven't had many of those, maybe like, I don't know, a handful of experience, and maybe more, just the ones I remember, handful of experience of that, where I woke up knowing it happened, knowing that I traveled somewhere, and waking up maybe exhausted, but knowing I had a feeling of freedom and intensity and joy and exhilarating excitement, like you would if you're flying over oceans and mountains and things you've never seen before, right? I'm a prairie girl. Didn't travel until I was like 18, 19 years old. Canada in the middle of really just nowhere here. But seeing things that I've never witnessed with my eyes, but having that same feeling as I did the first time witnessing mountains, or the first time witnessing the ocean. And I've never in this world experienced that till that point, right? So I knew I was traveling, but it was just kind of a cool thing where I couldn't control it. It was just like it happened or it wouldn't happen. And I didn't find any events or anything that would trigger that within me, or at least no correlation. I couldn't correlate any experiences that would trigger that on. And in fact, I haven't had that in a very long time. So I think when you're younger, you have less restrictions. You are able to be more open to these types of things. So I feel like I experienced more of that in my growing years. Now, I started the tarot at a young age. I was probably like 13, 14. And it was just looking at the cards and reading books and reading books and reading books and just having a fascination with the occult. And then, of course, as a teenage girls, me and my best friends, we'd do each other's readings. And I just kept on going with it, whereas my other friends would eventually, get into whatever they got into. And they'd come to me for readings and stuff like that. And we'd go visit psychics and just get into the occult and unworldly type stuff and share experiences, like that experience that I shared with you. And a couple of my friends had their own, which is, their own story to tell, but just like, okay, we know we're being authentic with each other, not making up these stories. And I was just like, cool, like you experienced that. Yeah, I experienced this. So you just know there's something there. So I hung on to that. But to get back to, I guess, my what I was living, I guess what was real to me or more in front of my face was how I grew up in an environment that just made me feel oppressed. I felt like, my parents, God bless their souls, they both passed away, but they, were very hard workers. And it was always a challenge and a struggle for everything that they tried to bring to them in this life. Like, they're immigrants, they moved here to Canada and had a gaggle of children. I have including myself, there's 5 kids. There was 6. My brother had passed away, but that's another story as well unto itself. But so 5 kids, and my father was hardworking, didn't finish school, neither did my mom, so it was limited when they didn't really speak a whole lot of English, and then you have all these children that you need to support, right? So anyway, I just felt like the world was a tough place to live in, right? And my parents' philosophy of you have to work hard, and they were very, hard workers, but there was always like a challenge. There was always a mindset of we're not in a position like everyone else to attain these things, and you need to fight for this type of stuff, right? So there's a lot of deprecating self-speak too, like I'm, a little bit different, or I don't have what other people have here, because they have this sort of support structure already, so they're able to kind of leap from a position of a stability, where I just felt like, okay, I'm kind of underdog sort of feeling. And it didn't help, my parents would just have self-speak to the children, just that we're not good enough or rich enough, or everyone's kind of against people like us who, don't have an education or are in this type of an environment. So it became just apparent to me also through school that, people were really focused on things that I didn't feel I was so much into. It didn't really matter so much to me, although I did get very good grades up until like the 9th grade, like straight A's and A pluses and all that. But I found at a certain point I just disconnected from what was going on, because something felt off. It felt off to me to have to be in a routine or a regimented plan where people were forced to do anything. Like, that really bugged me. Okay, now, you have to be up and at it at a certain time, and you have to go through this, and it to me made me feel very depressed. It made me feel like I had no control over myself. So I did drop out of school, in grade 10, grade 11, grade 12. By that point you're kind of taking a mixture of classes, right? So I did go back to get my high school diploma at 21, because it was important to me to prove to myself this thing. But I kept dropping out of school, and I kept dropping out of school because I just couldn't. I couldn't deal with what was going on around me. Like, none of it seemed like it mattered. So I couldn't get motivated. And also I felt like I needed my sleep. Like, I would sleep and sleep and sleep. And I don't know if it was a depression. I just felt like I needed 12 hours of sleep, 14 hours of sleep, where I could then feel like I could function. So, you know, of course, when you're growing up, you want to experience the world. So if I was up late and I'd go to bed, it's like, nah, I need to sleep. And it just felt more important. So anyway, I had that whole struggle, and it was internal because I couldn't really talk to anybody about it. But I felt like, because I was the youngest of 5 kids, nobody really cared what I was doing. Okay. I mean, they probably cared, but nobody was on me. And sometimes I would wish, you know, that my parents would be on me, because it was, an internal battle for me to win on my own, to accomplish something that I felt was important, because everyone's telling you it's important. So clearly it is, if everybody's saying it. And I am here on earth, and certainly, you know, to do anything here occupational wise, you need to have an education. So it just became, what's wrong with me? Okay. So anyway, having that whole struggle was a little bit of a challenge here. But spiritual awakening. Okay, so I don't know if it was a mixture of random things, like a dog's breakfast of things, that kind of kicked me into my spiritual awakening. And I'll get into certain parts of it maybe on a different video as I'm ready to explore and release some of it. But I think a big part of it was me, from a young age, knowing exactly what it was that I wanted, because of beliefs that were instilled on me. So for example, I grew up, like I mentioned, you know, poor, and like we were told we couldn't, you know, amount to much. So my mission was, I'm not going to be poor. I mean, I didn't really want a whole bag of money, but it's just like, I want to be like well-to-do, or have like what other people have around me. And to me, that was wealthy, right? Like if one of my friends had like anything that was normal, like a I don't know, a little gadget or a toy, or even their own bedroom, I was like, wow, like, you're wealthy. Okay. Because in like how I grew up, it was like a 2-bedroom home where my sisters had one room, my parents had the other. And, you know, me, my sister, my brother shared a dining room, living room / I don't even know. So I didn't even have my own space. Okay, but that's irrelevant, because there's benefits to that. And obviously the way I grew up, kind of fending for myself, right? So, but the point being is, I felt like that was my natural state, and I never felt like bitter about it. I just felt like I was the underdog fighting. So when I started to meet people with beautiful homes where they had their own room, or where they had these things where I'm like, wow, like, you're wealthy, but it's just like, most people have this, Lenda, like, this isn't anything different, right? And I'd at some point be like not wanting my friends over, because it's like embarrassing, like, I have nothing here, right? Like, let's go hang out in my dining room, because this is my bedroom. Like, it's just very bizarre. But so psychologically, it was like, I gotta prove to myself that I don't want to be, or at least if I have children, I don't want to be in this state of trying to play catch up. I want to be successful, okay? Like, have a normal life. I don't need to have like a multi-million-dollar life. Just, I need to have a normal life that I thought was wealthy. And so from 16 onwards till about 42, non-stop work. Okay, so started at 16, just work, kept my head down. I mean, entrepreneurial. I had my own business online. I started off in retail. I went into business to business. I did a lot of sales. I had probably more jobs than anybody I know. So it was great to add to my resume per se, because I got to know the ins and outs of so many worlds. From accounting to, like I said, retail, where you're dealing with consumers and immediacy, to business, where it became like dealing with $5 million deals, and, you know, technology, because I did like 5 years in automation, and yeah, just all across the board. Okay. And so it became natural to me to fit into anywhere. I was like the chameleon. Okay, the chameleon of things, because I could fit in anywhere. So I always felt like the world was my oyster, and I never limited myself. There was never a limitation I put on myself, but I was driven from a place to prove that I'm not going to be held back, or I'm not going to be less than anybody else. I just want to be on the same level plane. So that drive, or I guess that blind intensity, and it was very blind because it was just, I had a vision and I'd steamroll through, not that I would, or steamroll through people, but situations I would not let hold me back. People could not hold me back, right? So it was like, I need to have my home. I want to get married. I want to have kids. And if you scroll through my videos, you'll probably see like I have this collective awakening video somewhere there where I talk about, my drive and all that. But I start to attain stuff, right? Naturally, fancy cars, fancy home. And here I am, someone who barely finished high school in a, $1.5 million homes in a prestigious part of town. And, multi vehicles, and married for like 23 years with my spouse, and have these 2 beautiful children, a boy and a girl, and just living the life large, right? And I mean, there's challenges within my marriage, so I don't want to get into all that whole piece of it, because again, as I release these videos, I think once I'm more ready to kind of explore those topics a bit better, but there were challenges there, right? But for me, it became a thing of when my parents were together for 44 years or however long, there were challenges, and I see it, right? Like my father was abusive. My mother was mentally a little bit unstable. We're all a little unstable, but she went through some mental episodes that were really intense, where I didn't have a mother, okay? I didn't have a mother, where my siblings had her attention, but by the time I came around as the youngest, she was long gone. So kind of more raised by my oldest sister, which is a whole video unto itself. But anyway, I never felt like I had mother issues, but I never really had a strong bond with my mother. And that's the thing, okay? The thing is, whenever I talked about my abusive father or my disconnect from my mother, I was like, I'm over that. Like, look at me, I'm so happy. And I was, because I didn't feel like I was covering anything up. And I still to this day don't feel like I was harboring these anger, resentments, even going through my spiritual awakening. But there's something there, and there's something there that happens to you, and it changes who you are. Okay, so maybe I'm still uncovering bits of that, and maybe this is why I'm experiencing what I am. But there's one thing to say I forgive whatever has happened to me as a child and get over it, but then I guess there's another thing to fully understand and experience how it impacted you as an individual. So a lot of it, just I put it behind me and carry on, right? Like, what am I going to do about my mother not mentally being there? Like, I wasn't angry towards her. I was just like, okay, when I have kids and my own husband, like, I'll go visit her, but I'm kind of a little bit detached, right? But love her to death. And I still do, and that sort of thing. But you just kind of accept what's happened without any resentments. And without any resentments, right? Like, your heart is still open. And I always felt like my heart was open, and I have this unconditional love. Now, sidebar note, I always found throughout my whole life, I had this deep sense of gratitude and a deep sense of unconditional love, or just this love that no matter what was going on around me, I was just always so like feeling these intense feelings, like I'm still so grateful, right? Like speaking about not having my own room, or, having been on welfare for a period of time where it was difficult to even have food, right? Then it was like, but I'm so grateful that I have my siblings, or I'm so grateful I have both my parents, or I'm so grateful, like there was always something to be grateful for. And I think it might have been a coping mechanism now that I look at it, because I think when times got really, really hard, it was like I go and I'd trigger, and this is a natural response, which I think helped. And also maybe it is more aligning with authenticity, because instead of maybe going the other way where people might get bitter or angry or whatever, my natural self would kick in, almost like a fight or flight. So I need to release. And so my natural thing would be, I release any sort of anxiety or resentments, and I go into my gratitude and loving self. It's like, but I love this and I love that, and it's okay. And I feel a calmness and a peacefulness. So that started at a very young age. And I carried that with me throughout my whole life. And I feel like that's really helped me and guided me towards why I was as successful as I could be, because I could feel the deep feelings of gratitude and love. And, anything stemming from a place of love will only lead you to the right place. Any feelings of gratitude will just bring you more of that beautiful thing. So I feel like I was bringing in all of this wonderful love, all of this wonderful stuff, right? But my 3D world, now going back to this, like, as we know, material things, I mean, they're just material things. So by the time I got to a certain point, recognizing, was I truly happy in my marriage? Was I truly content and fulfilled with having material stuff that I wasn't really attached to? I never really, like, cared about that stuff. But for me, it was more about attaining something to prove within myself that I was capable and not this, uneducated, poor person that just came from lack mindset, that wasn't able to accomplish things. So for me, it just became, let me keep proving to myself that I am capable of climbing the corporate ladder, that I'm capable of, living with the 2% of the community that's in my city, even though, most of them are like football players and hockey players and whatever up the street. And here I am, someone who barely finished high school, who started off as retail and then sales, and, has like limited to 0 post-secondary education. So it felt very interesting that I was able to accomplish with my husband as well, not solely, but I do feel like I brought him with me down my vision, because he's very passive, right? And he is very loving, but also very much, it's his own story to tell, but very much in his world of supporting me in my vision, which my vision was, I have a mission, I have a plan, I'm doing this, and you can be here or you can go do your own thing, right? Like, and we just aligned, and that's how it became, right? So anyway, by the time my father passed away in 2015, and I was very close to him in a way that we had an understanding, although I recognized that there wasn't really a relationship with my father, because he was always working multiple jobs to support the family, and he was very bitter and angry. He was bitter and angry that he had to work so hard, and that my mother wasn't in his mind contributing financially, right? But mind you, she had all these kids, she didn't speak English, she was doing like cooking, cleaning, and we were poor, so I mean, she'd be washing by hand, and she'd be boiling her bath water, and because we didn't have hot water, and she'd be like, she was just a busybody all around, God bless her soul. But my father was, he was angry, and most of my family members were just like, oh, he's always in a bad mood, or he's always angry. But I kind of understood his position, right? And I mean, I understood her position too, but I think I sided more with him for some reason, which maybe I need a little bit more understanding here. But he was mad at the world, he was mad at society. He always thought people were against him, or why life was hard was because of other people, although that's the polar opposite of my mindset. But he and I just would have the same humor. He had passed away in 2015, which was a shock, because at that point my mother was really, really sick, okay? And part of me was like, well, she passes, like, I'll be sad, but I didn't feel like I was connected to her, right? So we want to be visiting her, and we'd be concerned, and suddenly, just out of nowhere, my dad passes away, okay? And he had a heart attack, but it threw me into like a whirlwind, like just all these emotions coming out, right? Like grievance and or grieving his loss, and having to go through that was very, very difficult. And then my mother passed away in 2018, but rewind a little, before she had passed away, we had to communicate to her why my dad wasn't visiting her at the hospital, because again, she was really sick, and he'd go and visit her every day, and then his surprise passing, and we wanted her to get better, so nobody really filled her in for a little while. I mean, it's not like she didn't know, but she kept asking, like, where's dad, and why isn't he coming to visit me, right? I've been married for 44 years, like, this isn't like him. And the day we had to tell her that my dad had passed was just like, it was worse than losing both my parents. So, we're all around, we're telling her what happened, and she breaks down, and it was a sad day. But there I felt like that point in time was like, like I said, like worse than losing my dad, worse than losing death. Like, it was just so heartbreaking and so heart-wrenching, and shortly after that, in 2018, she passed. And that impacted me a lot greater than I had thought it would, because again, my mother and I were just not, she seemed detached, and I didn't feel like she was emotionally invested in me, and I just felt like she kind of seemed afraid of my independence or of my edge. So she would not challenge me, and I just felt like that was almost a sign of no interest. But now I realize she just understood my independence, and maybe allowed me the freedoms to figure things out on my own. Okay, but I do miss her, and I mean, going back to spiritual things that happened from anyone that I've known that's passed away, which I didn't experience death until way later in life. But then I started losing people, okay? And I'd dream about them either 3 months, 6 months later, and it was not like a dream. And anyone who has this will know it was like you're saying your last goodbye to this person, because the dream is so vivid, and that person looks completely different. They look like they did in their 30s or their early 20s. So I had that with my father, I had that with my mother, and I just felt like a peace to know that they're around, but that I already had a life that was apart from that. I already moved out, I already had kids, not that it makes it easier, but I was already detached from them and their life, and I was able to cope, although you're never prepared and it is difficult, right? But as that's going on, of course, I mean, I'm still going through my challenges within my marriage of not knowing, because I got married at 18, okay, and here I am, like at 42, taking a look at my life, especially with both parents passing. It's like, what just happened here, and looking at my partner, like, okay, when I was 18, I had all of this stuff that I wanted and needed, or thought I needed, or needed to prove to myself, and I kind of like whitewashed anyone around me. Like, I didn't really see people that were around me, I guess. So I kind of really maybe didn't see him, or I don't know. I've always been grateful for sure, but there's something that disconnected. And I mean, from, getting married at such a young age too, people do drift, right? So I felt like it became a very good friendship for sure, but something about the relationship within itself kind of morphed, okay? So, or at least maybe it didn't morph, but it was something that was going on that I didn't see, or something that was going on that I wasn't concerned with, because I was more concerned with all these other things. And to me, it was like, I have a friend, I have a partner, I have somebody who is agreeable, I have somebody here. And it wasn't even about having somebody, but it was just somebody's there. So would you rather do something on your own and make it difficult if you have someone there who's agreeable and kind and compassionate, and you've known for, since your teen years, who who is trustworthy, okay? So that's the type of relationship I developed. But without getting into all the details of that, after my parents had passed, then, of course, as we know, the pandemic, okay? So that, to me, was, I think, the trigger point of me kind of kicking into high gear. So anything that I was covering under a rock, so to speak, was now coming out in the open. So what I mean by that is I was very focused on, my business, which was spending a lot of time online, kind of more solo stuff. Like, I wasn't really involved with people. Like, yes, I was having sales, but I didn't really go hang out with my friends. I didn't really have people. I didn't really let people in. Everything I did was kind of solo, and it's fine. I mean, I'm still kind of solo in that way, and I never really wanted to engage, or it never occurred to me that there was something there that I needed. So I would just continue on that. But as the pandemic, happened, and I kind of peered outside of my focus, I began to see the world, and I did not like what I saw at all, okay? And so I shut my business down for a couple years as I was navigating through the pandemic. That's a whole other video within itself, and like I said, I might lose some people here, but I was and still am a big believer of autonomy and freedoms and the right to choose. And people's independence and love and acceptance, and that's not what I saw. So it was fight or flight mode, right? That was triggering within me, and it didn't feel like there were a lot of people who were around me that kind of carried that same belief. So I felt even more pigeonholed into what it was that society had expected people to do, which I was like, I don't understand that at all, right? Don't understand that. So, left my job, fought a good fight of, protesting and all sorts of things. And down the rabbit hole we go to see, there's these malevolent, evil people out in the world here who control a lot of the power, who, are playing in the matrix and with instilling fear and instilling whatever it is to control people, to keep them in whatever matrices that help to build their power and their control and their money. Okay. And I was in that world for a while, right? Like trying to raise the awareness and really do that, but something still felt disconnected from that, because it still wasn't stemming from a place where I felt was that positive side. Remember I was telling you, when I shift to gratitude and shift to love, that feels right. But when I shift to a place of almost feels like a resentment and anger, a battle or a challenge or a confrontation, that to me is a little bit counterintuitive to my natural self. So although I was very vocal about, if you're silent, you're part of the problem, because if people are in it's our right to speak up, it's our right to fight for our freedoms, right? So if it's in front of your face and you're in that present moment and it's impacting you, then I feel like we all have an obligation to speak our piece for our own autonomy and our children who don't know or don't have a voice to speak for themselves. So that to me became very apparent. And I quit my job because my job obviously had their own, they were lining up with all the other businesses who were kind of running with whatever narrative and agenda was being forced down upon us. But everything going on in the world at that point was very depressing. Okay, now I'm fortunate that my family and I all kind of came from the same mindset. And when I say family, I meant immediate family. Okay, I have brothers, sisters. They kind of went through their own brothers. I have a brother and I have sisters, but they kind of were able to do whatever they were able to do. But to me, I saw my friends, my family bending to something that I felt was not natural, bending to something that I felt like everyone was bending to, that I wasn't going to bend to, because it didn't feel right. And it didn't feel right that people who were bending agreed with that either, but it was easier to bend than to stand. So without being a social justice warrior or whatever, because I really had nothing to prove, I was more upset, and I was more waving the flag of being upset, I'm not going to let this happen, and it's my duty, my responsibility to speak up here, but as I shifted more towards love and remove myself, because I feel like as things started to shift a little bit differently in the world, especially when it came to the pandemic, I felt like it wasn't in my immediate future. So I was torn, because I was like, well, since it's not immediately impacting me and now I forget it, and now it's people who are faced with that challenge, I feel like, am I abandoning those people? But then I became okay, to be present, to be in this moment is all we can really be. So if I get down the rabbit hole of this, how evil the world can be, that's not a place I want to be. I want to be in a place of, I'm looking outside, the sun's out, the birds are chirping, and not cognitive dissonance, but that there is a reality out here that I'm missing, and by that point, I had no more real desire to work. I had no more desire to fit in. I had no more desire to attain anything. I felt like I reached my pinnacle of what I wanted. I look back and I was in disbelief at everything that I accomplished. There was always more that I would be able to do, but I just felt I've reached the point where, so I get another car, it's not going to excite me. So I upgrade my home again. It didn't do anything for me here. It was like something there that I need to get in touch with, you know, and I could only really connect with people who were of the same mind of what was going on in the world. So, you know, talking to individuals who are far and few between who understood that, it's like there's other people out there who feel the same way I feel, and it encouraged me to know that what I'm feeling isn't it isn't fake, it isn't me going crazy, because there's other people out there that have the same belief of, you know, like I said, autonomy, and they're not wanting to bend, or they're wanting to be free, and they're wanting to understand that we are this spirit and we have something greater than just this 3D world and employment and, you know, being in a box, so to speak. So yeah, for me, once I became more, I'll get into the twin flame thing, I think, in a different video, but when I got really triggered, I guess, it became apparent to me that I was, and this always felt off, you know, that I'd wake up, I'd go to work, like I think all of us feel this way, but for me, again, if you scroll down my video, it was like, it felt really, really off. Like there was almost a sense of depression from even at a young age, where when I was talking to you guys about going to school, it didn't feel natural and right that I got to wake up at this time and do this. Like it just never did, and it throughout my whole life, but just kept pushing it aside. So I feel like when I had my spiritual awakening, all the things I pushed aside, okay, and said it's okay, and I'm grateful, I went straight to the gratitude, I went straight to the love, that I never processed all of these things. So when I had my spiritual awakening, it was floodgates of things that I didn't address, but it was like, I didn't address it because I felt I released it. But what I really did was I released it, but I didn't process it, okay? I didn't process it because, again, it could have been a coping mechanism. Like, how do you process, you know, an abusive father? How do you process anything, really, right? And you could grieve, but really process through your core and allow your heart to feel. I felt like I was switching on to the gratitude, switching on to, like, let it roll off. Let me stay balanced. Let me deal with this in a way that I could still carry on with life and be positive and still give love and all this, because that seems right? I'm not going to be grouchy. I'm not going to be angry. I'm not going to do all those things because it never felt right, and I never did. But what I didn't do was I didn't take the death. I didn't take the, you know, deep need for intimacy and feel that something was missing and understand that and allow myself to process and understand that there was something in there that was wrong, and that it, you know, that to feel those feelings isn't wrong, it's processing it. But I didn't feel those things. So at the spiritual awakening, all these things came flooding, and I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Is it because I lost my parents so close together? Is it because of the pandemic? Is it because I met my twin flame? Is it because I you know, lived my life a whole lie? And I say whole lie was because I thought I was living in my authenticity because that's what I wanted to prove to myself, and I did all that, and for many years I was like really accomplished. And it wasn't that I was like egotistical in a way that I'd be like, I am this accomplished person who's accomplished so much, and I look down, and I was always so like involved with people on a level that I understood when they were coming from a place of lack, because I understood that, so I could connect with them, and I felt more in line with them, and I was authentic with them, and I could, you know, I wasn't the type of hoity-toity living large person, so I always felt down to earth. So I felt great about myself. I am in a good financial material position of wealth, and I'm also a very authentic person who's not discriminating, who's not judging, and I can connect with people who are living in a challenging physical material world. So I was great, and I felt good, and I felt accomplished. But spiritual awakening, all that went out the window, because it was like none of it mattered. None of it mattered. What mattered to me was, what was my calling? What was I supposed to be doing? And I'm going to get into the signs of the spiritual awakening, okay? And I realize I'm almost an hour in, so we can do another video about the intensity of it. But as I became aware of that, okay, it takes a while for you to shift, because your mind wants to hang on to it, and mind is all about ego, and any attachment we have attributes something to that. So when you remove any attachment, then, you know, you kind of have to go through the death, and you kind of have to experience the feelings that you had. So it was like anything that I didn't experience, I was now experiencing, you know, bouts of, yeah, like it could be deep sadness, or different emotions. Okay, it was like an emotional roller coaster, and it wasn't like I was always depressed or always sad, although there was dark night of the soul where I did go through bouts of depression, which, you know, I can explain all that, but it was like different emotional. So you think, okay, am I bipolar, or like what's happening here? But you know, to the point where I had complete brain fog. I couldn't, and I'm very, again, focused, right? Like I pride myself on being very focused, very detail oriented, with all of my experience, with my career. Like I never was the challenging employee or the person who had a challenge struggling to do anything. So for me to string a sentence together, to even look at something or deal with an energy coming in, like a client or something, couldn't do it. Okay. So there was kind of a period where I could do it, but I was half-assing it. And then it just, I can't do it. I can't do this. I can't dedicate myself to someone else's vision. I can no longer pretend like I'm supposed to be doing this. So if I die, okay, it is that dramatic. If I die, but I'm on this other path, then so be it. But I know I'm not going to die, because I know that whatever I'm now knowing is for me, and I'm chasing that up, then I feel like God has me. Okay, God has my back. Source is going to protect me and just guide me where I'm supposed to go. So, you know, quitting my job was a big one, especially, like I said, I've been working since 16 all the way to, you know, 42, and like full time, right? And building my security. And for me, it was very important, but it became no longer important. Sold my house, my dream home. I thought I'd live there forever, right? Yeah, going through a separation, just all these things, and everything flipping upside down. So everything I thought was real to me, which was real at that point, became visible that it was so matrixy, and it wasn't real. Like, although it was real, it wasn't real. So, you know, for me, I can't even say why I kind of did the tarot. I think it maybe helped me as a tool to tap into what I was getting from spirit. Dreams were more intense. Synchronicities everywhere. I was seeing numbers like you wouldn't believe, like angel numbers, like to the point where I thought I was really going crazy, and I didn't want to see them anymore. So I'd get like freaked out, because it's like constantly seeing all the numbers, like 1111, 222, you know, 444, 555, like, and everything had a meaning to it that would just punch me in the gut. And it was like, no matter where I turn away, I'd see it. Wake up in the middle of the night, because again, not sleeping well was another sign of my spiritual awakening. Waking up, you know, and seeing it, and then having lucid dreams where I wake up and I'm still in a dream state, which rarely happens to me. I think I've had, you know, one, maybe two in the past, and then I had, you know, 3 of them back to back like that, where it seems so real, and where there was almost like a dark energy there, where it was like, this is like interesting, like what is going on, right? Which, again, another video for that. But yeah, and then bouts of really intense gratitude for me, okay? Because some people, I mean, I don't know what your spiritual awakening is like, but I almost felt like so loving and grateful that I was, and it's not an undeserving, like I don't deserve this, but it was almost like an undeserving, because it's like, I am so grateful that I cry at this blessing, you know, at a deep soul level, where I'm like on my knees, like kissing the ground. So grateful for the feeling I had. And it wasn't one thing individual. It was just like, oh my God, thank you, God. Like, thank you. I can feel this. I can feel this intensity. And thank you. And it got more intense and more intense. And these would come over me, these feelings of gratitude so intensely, just out of nowhere, you know. And then the next day I felt light. I felt happy. And then also bouts of just crying, right? Where I'll just be like, whatever, doing the laundry. And then all of a sudden I'm just like crying. And it's like, what am I crying about? Like, but I know I'm releasing something, or there's something there. And I'm just like, you know, praying to God that whatever I need to release, whatever I need to accept, whatever I need to process that I'm processing it, because I'm like, what do I need to process? Like, give it to me, you know, because I need to get over this. Like, give it to me. Don't give it to me in bouts, because it was bouts. I mean, bouts of 2 years of on and off crying and, you know, gratitude and depression and this. So yeah, for almost now, I'd say, I don't know, like not quite a year, but almost, where yeah, isolation. Like, I don't want to see people. I do not want to open myself up to a vibration that's not gonna be healthy, and I'm more sensitive to any energies that aren't vibrating there. So there's this like irritation almost, right? So even though I'm peace and love, it's like I can't be irritated by energies that aren't there. And then it became an awareness that I'm attracting these energies and they're within me. So if I'm irritated at something or someone or a situation, I'm bringing that into my life and it exists within me. So I'm kind of coming out more of my shell, I guess, if you will, surrounding myself with energies that I'm creating, you know, within my, within just my perception of what it is that I want around me, through feeling, through gratitude, through love, and hoping my reality kind of shifts. And it's more than a hope. I feel there's a knowing, although I do feel like, again, there's a disconnect because I'm still in a state of limbo where, you know, I quit my job full time to read tarot on YouTube. That is so not something I would have done if you had asked me this, you know, even maybe a year ago. I'd say no. And why I felt was healing for me, something about, you know, relationships for me, because I feel like that's probably what impacted me the most, was how relationships can have an impact, and especially on the divine feminine. And having experienced you know, what I've gone through in all the relationships, not necessarily romantic, so to speak, but yes, a big part of it, I just understood something. Like, I was blessed with understanding something that I felt, in order for me to heal, I felt like I wanted to experience giving this information, this knowledge, or at least transmitting it through me to someone else who might need to hear or feel, or whatever it is that I was feeling, in order for them to heal. So that became my quest, I guess. And I don't know if reading tarot online is my calling or what I'm supposed to do, but I do know that I am living a life of healing. I definitely know I'm a light worker. I definitely know I want to shed light and love and gratitude and vibrate at a level that allows other people to feel the same feelings and raise their vibration to me that feels more natural. Okay, so this is why I do what I do. But for the spiritual awakening, yes, your life is upside down, you detach. And I mean, you don't have to quit your job, but if you're not aligned with your true soul purpose, you might quit your job, you might, you know, get divorced, you might sell your house, you might leave all your friends, you might go whatever. Like for me, yeah, like the two real big focused parts of me was, you know, my home life and my career, and both those things that I was really attached to. And I don't know what order it was in, to be honest. Was it my career, then my family, or was it the other way around? It was all in one. Like, it wasn't like, it was all in one, you know, because I can't say that I always chose my family over my career, because I had, you know, 2 children growing up. And did I stay at home with them when I wanted to? No. So I was, in fact, choosing my career. And now in hindsight, it's like I could have done it different. But I don't sit in regret. But I do know that career and family were top on my pyramid. And those are the 2 things that first just got flipped upside down. Now, obviously, I mean, I love my children, I love my family, but I mean, we sold our home, and you know, you can ask my kids, they call me antisocial, and they notice a change in me because I'm just not who I was in the past. You know, it's like I'm not driven to, you know, fly around and close deals and all that stuff. And I mean, I don't even like to travel. So I was traveling, and I was, you know, business oriented meetings and all the stuff that just filled my day with nonsense. I say, I mean, if you're in that state and you love it, then all power to you, because we always need, you know, we always need different people in this world in order to get things done. You always need to buy homes. You always need to, you know, automate things that need or can be automated, or whatever the case may be. But for me, healing became a thing, and not necessarily selling someone on safety or automation or what have you. So yeah, that is a big part of it. But I feel like because I was coming from a place, I feel like a lot of people struggle, or at least I observe this. I don't know if it's true or not, and maybe I'm painting it to be true, but I feel like a lot of people do not have gratitude and do not have an unconditional love, or at least they're acting out of a place of fear. And maybe you could say I was acting out of a place of fear too, because I had to prove it to myself, but I never felt afraid. I just felt determined, and I felt like I had to show myself something here, right? So it wasn't like, oh, I'm afraid to be poor, therefore I must continue. It was like I had an awareness that's like, I must continue to prove to myself that I am capable of doing this, because I never want to be in a state where I feel lack, where I feel like I can't, where I feel limited, where I feel like I'm not in control of, and again, control is ego, right? In control of what my outcome is. And until I realize that I don't need to control anything, and I'm already perfect as I am. I don't need to chase anything, right? So was it a fear? I don't think so. But it was always out of a place of loving myself. And it was always out of a place too of loving other people, that I knew if I was able to do these things, and it's like anybody can do it. Like I really felt like that. Not that I felt like I was like the bottom of the bottom, and if I'm that shit, then everybody, but I really felt like I was on the bottom. Like I'm not rich enough. I'm not smart enough, especially not finishing school. I'm not talented enough. I'm not all of these things, right? That if I can do this, then anybody can do it. And I felt I did exactly what I set out to do, and it still left me in a place of it wasn't taking me to the place that I was completely, utterly fulfilled. So now the journey is, obviously I'm still going through my spiritual awakening, but what I was getting at is a lot of people who aren't in that place of love or gratitude might have a different type of a spiritual awakening, which might limit them. So I feel like I'm truly blessed, because now when I have a connection to source in this spiritual awakening, I feel like I'm more expansive, and I can really tap into areas that allow me to go further and further from where I'd ever thought I'd be. And I kind of feel like I bypassed some parts of this spiritual awakening just through my gratitude and my love and my ability to use the law of attraction, which I have always done, even previous to me knowing about it, just out of this natural way of being. So for me, the spiritual awakening, some parts of it were really challenging, but a lot of parts were easier, or at least it flowed a lot easier than what I hear other people going through. So I am very blessed, in that regard. But there were some parts, like I said, having to process emotions that I always felt I was a pretty open-hearted person. I would never felt that I would, not express myself. One thing about me, you can ask any of my close friends, like Linda, oh yeah, she expresses herself. She's very expressive. She doesn't hold back. She's very truthful and communicative. And if I feel something, I say it. So it wasn't that I felt I was like burying these emotions because I couldn't open up. It was that these things are happening to me, and I'd be like, okay, thank God, thank God I'm alive. I gotta, my father passed. I can't get into that because then I'm just going to a dark place. Okay, bye, Father, and, oh, my marriage, is a struggle, but, he's here and we're friends and things are well. So it's like, okay, I can accept this. But it's like, you got to take that pain and you have to experience it. And I know that sounds like shit because we don't want to experience this. So all of those things you can imagine from childhood, when I started using that coping mechanism. And I think it might have been, early teens, maybe even younger, actually. I think, early childhood, for 43, 44 years of that. So that all came out, all those milestones in my life, those significant milestones. So I didn't know what I was crying about or what I was laughing about, where I'd just be happy. And I just felt this gratitude because now I'm feeling the thrill of having that newborn child, or now I'm feeling the gratitude of accomplishing something that made me feel worthy of it. But I never allowed myself to get into those emotions because I never wanted to get attached to it or process it. So all of these feelings were happening to me, so I never knew what was the past, what was happening to me then, because I just kind of attached it to what was happening to me then. It's like, oh, I must be crying because I'm going through the separation, or I must be, in my mind about this because my twin flame triggered me, or I must be, like all these things that our mind just starts attaching stories to, until, like I said in my other video, I started to get more into my meditation and more into opening up to spirit, that I realized the person within me that's witnessing that is actually separate from my mind, separate from my attachments. And that calm knowing allowed me to really process emotions and detach myself from my mind, so that I am able to go through these. Now, do I still have bouts of crying? Yes, because I feel like there's still things coming out, but it is getting better. And I feel like there's a neutral place now that I feel I'm not so in my head, and I'm not completely this volatile emotional being that's experiencing these things that are, so crazy. Although I do give, a very intense meaning, and the smallest thing could set me off in a way that brings a memory or brings a something where it means something so deep, and I think I've always kind of been like that and not known where that stemmed from, where I could see whatever, something that is really minimal or trivial to someone else, and it triggers something within me, and I could just be like crying over this flower that's budding, and people are like, okay, that's weird. It's just how I am. So I think it manifested in me in different ways. And I feel, again, like, because I am so much into love, and although I'm antisocial according to my kids, and being around people I feel is challenging, but I have this love about me, about humanity, and about people at such a deep soul level, that I think when I connect on that energetic level, I have no choice but to experience that. And as an empath, if you want to call it that, I just feel like I'm an energy reader. I can get in tune with that. I have to feel it, in order for me to be authentic. I don't turn away from it. I feel it. And then I have to process it. So sometimes it's dark and sometimes it's light. And then I got to remind myself that I am, my own being, and I can experience and let in whatever it is I want to let in, and not let in certain energies I don't want. So I'm still learning that, right? Because it's easy just to take in any energy that may need healing, or you might feel a connection to, but it's not maybe our battle, or maybe it's not our thing to take on. So still learning that, but I want to get into, in another video, the angel numbers, the synchronicities, like so intensely that you think you're going crazy. And so in your mind, loop thoughts where, like, I almost thought I had to get mentally committed to a mental hospital. Thank God that was really short-lived, right? From that stage. And then thinking, okay, well, maybe I'm having like burnout or depression. So when am I going to be real with myself about it, only to eventually get out of it and realize that it is me going through an awakening and lining all these things up. Okay, so lots to talk about. Sorry if I talked your ear off. I hope this helps somebody. Let me know about your spiritual awakening. I am really curious. I probably missed like some really big points here, but these are the things that are coming to me without getting into too much detail and airing out all my dirty laundry, so to speak. But I do love you guys so much. I hope you can stay. I hope we can go through this journey and learn from one another, help heal each other. And I do enjoy being on this vibration. So I know if you're watching this, you're vibrating at a very high level, and you may come with different traits and talents and gifts, but I know it's at a high level. I talk about gratitude and love because I feel those vibrate the highest, but you're vibrating on a high level, so maybe you call it something else. But I truly believe you're vibrating on a very high level, and it becomes lonely sometimes. But if you're in such a high level, I don't feel we feel loneliness. We might be coping with things a little differently, but I don't think you are. I don't think you're lonely. I really don't. I think you're strong, and I think you're vibrating, and I think you want to know, and I think you're understanding, and you're researching, and you're getting stronger, and your confidence and who you are, getting in touch, ascending, and all that great stuff. And I'm not a master of spirituality. I just know what I've experienced, so you know what you've experienced to be true, and I believe you. And you're not going crazy, and you are worthy of all that the Spirit can bestow upon you. We just have to believe in ourselves being open to it. So yeah, just I have your back. Whatever you're doing, bless you so much. I want to give my utmost gratitude, and I'm so thankful that you're here, and I am thankful for your contribution to this earth and you raising the vibration as a light worker, as an individual, for people around you, for yourself. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. Okay, bye.